Welcome to another episode of Modern Black Man Podcast. This week, I am joined by the creator, owner of Black Sports Online, Mr. Robert Littal. Mr. Little, I appreciate you making the time. Thank you so much. How you feeling?
Oh, no problem, man. I love coming on shows like this, seeing people do things for us. It's very important, especially in media and especially this new age media with podcasts and YouTubes and live
Absolutely.
streams. That's the future. So to try to help out and see you guys doing these type of things, I always like to be as helpful as possible because I'm old school. I started off doing newspapers and
Oh,
stuff
wow.
like that. When I was in college and high school, we just had the print, we had the local TV, we had the local radio, and you had ESPN, and that was it.
Oh, wow. I know you're from the greatest city on earth, my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri. So, absolutely. What local papers were you reading when you were first getting started?
St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
Mm-hmm.
And you're from St. Louis, so they had all those like the North County paper and the South County
Right.
paper. I used to read. My mom had actually got me a subscription to USA Today, so that was my big like national paper where I used to read all of the stuff that was going on. But yeah, I used to be a big paper reader, a big magazine reader, Sport News, which is I don't know if it's still based out of St. Louis, but I know they started in St. Louis. Sports Illustrated. The print, used to be before all this online stuff. That's where you used to get your news about your sports. And I
Right.
kind of consumed all of that when I was a kid.
So, was it the newspaper that motivated you to get your empire started? With that beginning, what was the next step? Because the world, like we just were saying, it's speeding up and getting so incredibly big. What was your first leap into this world of sports information?
Well, it's interesting, as long as I can remember, I was a big sports fan. I'm talking like 5, 6 years old. I was always into sports and playing sports, just like a lot of young kids. But even back then, I had an interest in the way it was presented, like the broadcasters,
Mm.
the highlights. I always used to watch the news, and I wait for the sports guy to come on and do the highlights. I always had an interest in that. I don't exactly know why. I don't know exactly where it came from, but
Right.
the
St.
highlight.
Louis is a great sports town, though.
Yeah, Joe Buck and all of those guys, and his dad was there back then. So, when you watch the Cardinals back then, when they had Ozzie Smith and Willie McGee and stuff, I used to watch the games. So I was always interested in that part. As I got older, it became a kind of a two-pronged thing. It's like, like every other young black man in the 90s and the early 2000s, I thought I was going to be a rapper. So,
Okay.
so I was doing that. But the whole time, with my education, it was always based off of journalism. Back then when I was in college in the late 90s and the early 2000s, the goal, it was still, print, radio, TV. So, I was hoping to be like a local sportscaster or maybe a sports radio guy or write for the newspaper. So those are the three things I was looking at, coming out of college. But it wasn't a lot of jobs available. The media wasn't as big as it is now. And that's when the internet was. People don't realize the internet is only like 30 years old. Like,
yeah.
And I'm older than that. So I remember a time with no internet. So like the internet's not an old thing, especially like high speed. Just the way we consume it now, it's been a decade, 15 years. It hasn't been a long time, but I actually kind of got in on the ground floor, of that medium and that industry. And then I think it kind of helped because I was there, from the start and kind of was doing things, in media from an online, internet perspective before it really kind of caught on.
And I mean, you have absolutely an empire right now, and you're the go-to for a lot of people like me. I just was watching BSO TV, looking at interviews. I've been following your Twitter feed for years. How do you do it? How are you constantly on the pulse of sports and things as they're happening? I mean, are they coming to you first?
It's interesting because it's like anything. You get experience and you grow and you learn the business and you learn the ins and outs. And I was really, really young when I started. So when I
Yeah.
would go into like these interview rooms or I would go to these events, I was 25, years old, and the guys that were there were 50, 60, years
Yeah.
old and had been in the business for 20, 30 years because they didn't let a lot of, you said to work your way up a little bit, before you got
Hmm.
to cover a Super Bowl or boxing or an NBA finals. So I was young, but I was soaking up all of this, information and being able to be independent and being able to kind of move at your own pace and be able to skip steps, so to speak. Like I wasn't an intern. I didn't have to work. I didn't have to get nobody no coffee. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
like I when I was 26 years old, I was interviewing Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. Interviewing. I was asking questions to Bill Belichick.
Right.
So you learn quick like that because if you make a lot of mistakes, you don't get a lot of opportunities. So then you fast forward 15 or so years, all of that experience of being young, I still like to consider myself relatively young, but you just
Right.
have a process of knowing what to do, what to say, how to say it, where to go. And then you create a network of people that you can go to, that you can talk to, that you can depend on, that you can trust. And you make a lot of mistakes along the
Yeah.
way. And the key is when you make those mistakes, and I've made ton, try to learn from them and keep it moving and don't make the mistakes again. Unfortunately, as black men, sometimes, our mistakes are held against us a little longer than others.
Right.
So that's a hard lesson to learn, but, nobody's perfect. And, you got to kind of learn from that and just, keep it moving.
I want to talk about your process and your network because as long as I've been following you, it doesn't seem like you have a mentor or a boss. It
Mhm.
seems like you do what you do, and it's always taken. I mean, some people throw something against the wall and they hope it sticks. You're banging out bullseyes. I mean, can you talk to me about how you developed your instincts so early, so naturally, and what your process is and what's important for your network?
Well, I tell people all the time that I think everybody in life has like certain talents. Like I think everybody does. Like I have a stepbrother, right? Like he didn't do well in school, but he can like put an engine together from
Right.
scratch or whatever. Like that was his talent. His talent was the cars, and he went on to do like some great things with like in engineering and all of that stuff. My talent has always been just kind of the way that I'm able to communicate certain things in a unique way. And in media, that's a good talent to have because
Absolutely.
you're taking information that is readily available to everyone, and you have to put it out there in a way that people want to listen or read what you have to say about it. And that's kind of been my gift has always been, and goes back to your boss about not having a boss. When you don't have
Hmm.
a boss, you still have to watch what you say and things that you do, right? But you do have more freedom to
Yeah.
try more things, right?
Hmm.
Like in school, they would never tell like in journalism school, in the class where they teach you to write like a headline, right?
Hmm.
They wouldn't tell you to write almost a two paragraph, headline. But you have to think about it. Like you said, things are moving fast. So what do you do when everybody sees the same information? How do you get them to
Yeah.
come to you? Well, you got to be creative. You have to take a risk. You have to, be different. And when I say be different, I always say I don't act outside of who I am. Like I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I know what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not comfortable with. So I just kind of stay within myself. I stay with what I know. I don't try to act like I know something that I don't. If I'm talking about bobsledding, I
Hmm.
don't, I'm just gonna be like a fan talking about bobsled. Now, if you asking me to break down boxing, I could talk about that for an hour because that's more of my experience. I think a lot of times in media, people try to create a character, and it comes across as fake or it comes
Yeah.
across as WWE-ish, right? I think
Hmm.
one of the reasons people come back to BSO, come back to me, is that with all my failings and successes and everything, I'm always real. I'm always honest. and who I am, and people can see that, and I think that carries a level of respect within the industry.
There's a brilliance in your realness and authenticity. You, like I say, you are going after it. You're just doing it, and I've seen your growth, and that's why I was really curious about who's molding you, who's leading you. Obviously you have good people in your network. What is valuable for assets in your world?
But let me say this, because I don't think this gets said enough, and I only realized this as I went through this journey. Right, you have to have people that are kind of outside of what you actually do as your center. You know what I mean? And the reason I say that is because sometimes if it's people within the same thing that you're doing, right? Oftentimes they are looking out for themselves, rightfully so. You know, it's survival of the fittest, out here. So, you confide in certain people, you tell certain people certain things, and they at times can use that as leverage, against you. So I'm very kind of private in telling too much to too many people, right? But I have people outside of the industry, my wife, family, some close friends who are very centered and don't really care anything about fame and who knows you or how many likes you have or how many things. Those people kind of ground you and keep you centered and keep you letting you know what's important. I think one of the big differences in media today and media 20 years ago, right, is that people in media today also want to be famous, like the athletes, like the entertainers, like the rappers, right? And when you want that type of attention, your ability to be fair and unbiased, and that gets compromised, right?
Yeah.
Because you're getting hyped up because everybody's saying you so great. You post a picture at the party and it gets 1,000 likes. All of a sudden you think you're the star, right? Yeah. And it's a weird time because it's like, what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known for your actual work, or you want to be known for your hot take or get into arguments with the athletes online? It's so, to me, it's like, as I've gotten older, because I was a product of that. I got
a prodigy.
In that.
You were a prodigy as well.
I got caught up in that. There was a time, especially early in my career, where things were taking off and people were noticing me and such. My head got a little big. I got a little arrogant. My chest was out a little bit. But then you realize, that's not really the important thing. Your family's important. Your kids are important. All of this stuff. So, in me, the network is that you got to understand the difference between colleagues, people that you work with, people in the industry who you're cool with. Those are separate from people that actually care about you, who actually love you, your friends, your family, the people that you can really depend on. And you have to keep that separated, because if not, you get your feelings hurt.
That's great advice. It sounds like boxing is your favorite sport right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, boxing is my favorite sport to cover, like as far as going to like events. And I have a soft place for boxing because when none of these leagues would let me through the door, it was these guys in boxing, the promoters, and those guys that kind of let me get my feet wet in that, let me cover an event. Because they didn't let people that just had websites cover the Super Bowl or cover the World Series or something. You have to. It's common now. It wasn't common when I started. So the boxing guys kind of gave me my break to let me know, like, this is what it's like to cover an event. This is how you interview someone. This is how you dress for a press conference. This is how you carry yourself. So, I have a soft spot, for them, because they kind of got me the experience that I needed to catapult me to some of these bigger leagues and bigger events.
Absolutely. Who is your favorite current boxer?
My favorite current boxer. I like Triple G. I know he's getting up there in age, but when I was like, I like Triple G. I like what Canelo does. Big fan of Earl Spence.
Mm.
Like some of these younger guys, the Virgil Ortizes, the Boots Ennis.
Oh, you like the
Uh,
chess players. You
yeah,
like the chess player.
yeah.
Okay.
I like the boxer punchers.
Hmm.
I grew up in the ending of the Tyson era and the beginning of the Mayweather Pacquiao type of era. But I like the boxer puncher.
So do you prefer the boxers of old, those heavyweights, or do
Mhm.
you like these new high volume, smaller guys
You,
boxing?
I think it's the I like the era of the 80s and the 90s and I guess 70s a little bit before my time, but I studied that era. The
Hmm.
only reason I kind of like that era a little more is because they fought more frequently.
Hmm.
So the reason that these guys became stars is because you were seeing them 3, 4, 5 times a year sometimes, a lot of times on regular television and everything.
Right.
And now, one of the reasons I like Canelo, it isn't so much that, I think he's the best boxer or whatever. I like just the fact that, hey man, I could see the top guy 4 times a year, 2, 3
Yeah.
times a year, as
Yeah.
opposed like I like Earl Spence, I like Bud Crawford, I like the Charlo brothers and Keith Thurman, but
You
they
didn't
don't
say
fight
Javante
frequently,
Davis yet.
huh?
You didn't
Well,
say Javante.
I like Tank Davis, but it's the same thing. It's like when you're fighting once or twice a year, and
Hmm.
they're not necessarily the biggest, fights that can be made. One of the things I don't like about boxing in 2022 is that way more boxing on Twitter, on Instagram than in the ring.
Yeah.
Like take a Ryan Garcia, extremely talented kid, right? All we
Hmm.
do is tweet and Instagram. We don't, and then when the fight is actually announced, there's somebody we ain't never heard of.
Yeah.
Mm,
It's I don't know. I don't know what boxing may need
mm,
to get back to its height of popularity.
mhm.
But I see that these smaller boxers are absolutely the future, and I look forward to you covering that. As far as other sports like basketball, do
Mhm.
you have a team that you follow, a team that you're a fan of?
It's interesting because being from St. Louis, as you know, um,
The Hawks.
in general, you got the Cardinals and you got the Blues. And you had the Rams for a little bit, but when I grew up in the era, it wasn't really that good. So
Yeah.
I always liked teams. At least when I was younger, it was more the major teams. Like I like the '90s Cowboys because of Michael Irvin and Deion Sanders. I like the
Hmm.
Shaq and Kobe Lakers and things like that. So but as I got older, those guys, retired.
Right.
So I realized that I didn't like the teams as much as I identified with the players because in the
Mhm.
'90s and the 2000s, basketball players, NFL players, they really affected how we dressed, how we talked, the swag and
Yeah.
all of that stuff. And then as I got older and they got older, I found myself not really liking any like teams. So to answer your question, even though I'm out here in LA now, I'm not particularly a Lakers fan or a Clippers fan or a
Hmm.
Warriors fan. I'm more of a just kind of a fan of good basketball. Like a lot of people ask me, does it bother me all the player switching and stuff like that? I'm like, not particularly. It's more drama than basketball at times, but that's what people like to watch.
You kind of answered what I was thinking in my mind.
Mhm.
There are no more dynasties.
Yeah.
We aren't able to attach ourselves to um, a dynasty, but we can see these transcendent players. So, with that being said, I would like to know your top 5 NBA players
Of all time?
right now,
Oh, right now.
currently in the league.
Currently in the league right now, I would say number one would be a healthy Kevin Durant.
Okay.
uh, I think Giannis is right there. Number two. I think let's see. Jokic. I love Jokic. I think gets a little underrated
Amazing.
because he's foreign and he plays out in Denver. But I think Jokic is right there at number three. Let's see. He's the top 5. Who else is out there? I'm thinking Steph, but I feel like there's somebody I'm missing. Like Steph's right there at the 5, 6.
It might be a guy in LA.
Oh yeah, well LeBron. Yeah, LeBron is still there. When LeBron, he's 150 years old, but my God, he's still such a good when he's out there on the. Yeah, I would say probably LeBron. I'd say LeBron before Steph, and then maybe Steph, and then maybe Joel Embiid. I think it's right in there with that. I think there's some good bigs that are out there. It's really impressive what LeBron is doing at the age that he's doing it. But I think he's finding
like
out.
It's 2009 again.
Yeah, I think he's finding out though what a lot like what Kobe found out, what Jordan found out when he came back with the Wizards, and with a lot of these old guys when they change teams is even if you still got it, it's hard to carry a team at that age, and at this point in LeBron's career, Anthony Davis should be averaging like 30 and 15, and LeBron should be like playing 30 minutes and averaging like 22 and 9, like just cruising until it's time for the playoffs and then turn it on. He shouldn't be having to average 28, 10, and 10 just to keep them afloat. So, but it's amazing what he's doing.
I'm a Lakers fan, so you absolutely talking my language. What did you think about this Super Bowl? About what we saw last Sunday? What did you take away from that game?
Curious game, right? It was kind of a weird game. Yeah. I mean, competitive pretty much throughout, but some real like long patches of kind of just punts. Then, the refs weren't good, and then at the end they throw a bunch of flags and kind of throws on, and then just kind of over. It's one of those things where if you're Odell Beckham and Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, when you win that ring, it changes your whole legacy. No matter what happens going down the road, I think it's going to be tough for the Bengals and Joe Burrow. It's always tough coming off a Super Bowl loss. They're in the AFC with Buffalo, Kansas City, New England, Ravens, Chiefs. I mean, it's going to be a tough haul to try to get back. That's going to be a bloodbath. And I don't even count like the Raiders and the Chargers. Like it's going to be tough for them.
It sounds like Cinderella isn't going to find her slipper.
I just I'm not saying that he can never get back. I'm just saying that this was a golden opportunity, and the coach made some curious decisions that people are going to look back on a long time. I think in the end, 20 years from now, or 10 years from now, the people are going to remember the halftime show more than the game.
I think that's true. And I think the Bengals will be the Bengals next season. I think that's what's going to shock a lot of people. So while we're on football, I do have a couple questions I'd love to talk to you about. Do you think that Matthew Stafford, after securing the Super Bowl win, is Hall of Fame bound?
No, not at the moment. But the reason I try not to talk about like stuff like that, and I hate when other people, not saying you, I'm just saying in general, it becomes a big conversation, is that I think Matthew Stafford is 33 years old, right? Most quarterbacks that are like running and putting their body at risk, you play to 35, 36, 37, maybe 38. So I think what this does is he wasn't close before. Now it's a conversation at least. Now what you do between now and the end will determine if you get in. Like I always thought, like Eli, if he had just won one Super Bowl and just the rest of his career just played out the way it did, I don't think people would be like, I think they'd be like, nah, you won one. Because I don't want to say anybody can luck up into one, but there's a lot of quarterbacks that aren't great that have won Super Bowl. Your Trent Dilfers, your Brad, I forget his name, Brad something. You kind of get a Super Bowl here and there. You get two, I think now you're talking. So if I was Stafford, if I wanted to rubber stamp it, I would try to get two, because I don't even know if they're going to let Matt Ryan in.
Well, what really makes you a Hall of Famer? Because I've always thought Matthew Stafford had an amazing arm, but he proved that he could be a part of a team and use that asset. But does that really make him a Hall of Famer? Because I think there are other quarterbacks that are better. We're talking about Eli. He has 2 Super Bowl wins, and I think it's more contentious to suggest that he's a Hall of Famer than it is to really discuss this with Stafford. But everybody is quick to say, "Oh, he's a Hall of Famer. He's the greatest thing out right now."
It's you know what makes it harder? For 2 reasons, I think. First off, you can't trust the media voters, right? You see what they did to T.O. and how they've treated others in the past. So first off, it's almost like more of a popularity contest than anything else. But the second part is the game has changed so much, right? If you look at the Hall of Fame quarterbacks from like the 70s and the 80s and even the early 90s, the numbers as opposed to now look totally skewed. Like if someone was like Terry Bryant or Joe Namath, for example,
Dan Marino,
yeah, it's just like I don't know if that. So you have to kind of balance it between like the different eras. Like Matt Ryan in this era, it has a lot of big numbers and a lot of touchdowns and everything. But if you had dropped Matt Ryan in the 70s, would he had just been another guy with some pedestrian numbers? So it's a tough one. But I think Stafford, like I said, he went from no shot to in the conversation, and that's what a ring gets you. Like
overnight.
Or losing a ring, get you.
So, what do you think about Brian Flores and the controversy associated with his time in Miami?
I think the thing about Brian Flores is this. It's one of those situations I talked about in a little mini video I did. Everybody knows that he's telling the truth in general, right? Because you don't have a Rooney Rule if there's no problem, right? You don't have all of these quote-unquote social justice initiatives if there's no problem. You don't have all of this, we're going to try to do diversity this and diversity that if there's no problem. But it's like he's telling you, here's specifically what the problems are, and now the NFL is like, whoa, there's no problem. What are you talking about? That has no merit. Even though
all those teams just denied it and they're trying to play like he's crazy.
Yeah, so my thing is like, well, why do you have these initiatives if there's no problem, if none of this stuff is even feasible to happen? So, I don't know if every single thing that he said is 100% true, but I think anybody with a clear mind and who isn't racist is like, well, obviously these things are happening because just look at today. The Vikings hired a guy that's the Rams offensive coordinator. He's been the offensive coordinator for 1 year, right? White guy. He used to play in the league, offensive coordinator for 1 year. Right. I mean, I watched, I was at the Super Bowl, but I came back and I like to watch it. I recorded, then I watch it back again to see the commercials and stuff, right? When I watched it back on the DVR, every time the Rams offense was on the field, they showed Sean McVay in his little play sheet.
Right.
I don't know if they would have put the camera on the offensive coordinator, I wouldn't even know who he was. That's all I see is Sean McVay calling plays. Now, with the Chiefs, they do the same thing to Andy Reid. But Andy has been the offensive coordinator for multiple years, multiple big offenses, and he can't get a job. This guy's an offensive coordinator for 1 year, doesn't call the plays, and 35, 36 years old, hasn't even been a coach for like that long period, and he gets a head coaching job just like that.
Yeah.
So that's Brian Flores' case, right there. And that's why I'm like, instead of fighting Brian Flores, they would have been better off just saying, something, I see you had to sue us. We're going to investigate this thoroughly.
There we go.
On every team, on every level. And if you're right and we find some stuff, we're going to talk to you. We're going to work it out, whatever it may be. But it doesn't make any sense for them to be like, oh, it's without merit. And then all of this other stuff is going on.
Tomlin's the only coach that I've actually seen thrive in the NFL. And I just got into an argument with a good friend of mine before I did the show. He tried to assert that there is no racism. He tried to say that Mike Tomlin doesn't face racism, so it's not that he's exceeding expectations or fighting things. I think that that's very false, and I think that we can see as an audience the circumstances for the coaches, the coordinators, the organizations as a whole for the diversity. Most of the league's black, but they will refuse to let these players be led by anyone that looks like them.
Well, think about it like this: it's called the Rooney Rule, and he's the one that plays for Rooney. So,
and that's my point. That's the only team I've ever cheered for is the Steelers. My pops is from Pittsburgh.
And here's the thing: look, even though Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing record in whatever 15 years or whatever it may be, and it's been to a couple of Super Bowls, every year that they would have went like 8-8 and 9-7, they tried to get him fired.
Exactly.
So it's not that Mike Tomlin doesn't experience racism. Yeah, and I think people confuse that with Brian Flores. It's not that no black coaches ever get a job. It's not that no black coaches ever get an opportunity. The subtle racism about society people don't understand. It's not like I always try to explain this to white people, and it's the simplest thing. I say to white people, I tell them this. I say, listen, we don't want extra. We just want the same. So if you get a bank loan and I get a bank loan and we both make the same amount of money and we both have the same credit score, then if you get $100,000 loan and they approve me for 50, that's what we're talking about. We're not saying you shouldn't get your 100.
Right.
We just want our 100 too.
We don't want equality. We want equity.
We want equity. We just want the same thing. So with the black coaches, it's not so much like we just want to know if we go into an interview that we legitimately have the same chance as the white candidate. Also, if we're hired, we want to know that we will be given the same liberties as a white coach. You know, like they did some sort of study where black coaches overall are more successful than white coaches, but they get fired earlier in their tenure. Yeah. So it's people don't understand it. They say, well, Lovie Smith got hired. Well, my question is, the guy they hired before was black, and he won the same amount of games with and without Deshaun Watson, and they fired him anyway.
But all of those classic black coaches came from the same tribe in Tampa. It was Tony Dungy. It was Lovey. They were all there at the same time, and we're recycling them. Where when one of them gets a second chance because they deserve it, we try to say that the problem's solved, like you just said.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Before I let you go, last question I really want to ask you: what advice would you give to someone that really wants to make a little bit of a splash in sports media? What's a good avenue or a good venue to really get to deliver that content?
I'm gonna tell people the truth because people don't like the truth, right? I'll be perfectly honest with you, and I'll be perfectly honest with your audience and stuff like this. Okay, I'm a proponent of going to college. Okay, the reason I'm a proponent for going to college has nothing to do with studies. Okay, the reason I think you should go to college is for twofold: is that I think it helps your interpersonal skills. It helps you learn about the world. It helps you learn about dealing with different races, colors, and creeds, problem solving as a young adult. Secondary, I think it helps you, depending on what school you go to, make connections. Because what I'm going to tell you next is very, very important, right?
Okay.
And I'd hate I got to say it, but it's true. In media, sometimes it's who you know, not how talented you are. Okay, so you need to understand as a young person that you need to make certain connections, certain bonds, befriend certain people. You have to learn how to move in those circles. You writing the greatest 10,000 word piece is not necessarily going to get you to that next level. That's just the fact. In 2022, that's the fact of the matter. In 1990, it's probably like everybody was turning in their written pieces and nobody knew what anybody looked like. And you might get the job that way. That's not the best way in 2022. The second thing I want to tell you is this, and this is very, 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 very important, and very important. And I want people to understand this. And even if you're uncomfortable, you have to put yourself on every available social media and media platform that's there. You have to continuously have people see your face and hear your voice and hear your opinions and hear how you talk about sports or entertainment or movies or whatever. And when I say that, I mean podcasts, I mean Twitter, I mean Instagram, I mean if you got to do some TikTok dances, you start your YouTube channel. When you're young, that's the best way for you to do that. You know why? You don't have any bills. You don't have any children, hopefully. You know, you have a lot of free time, and, you know, you're not really bound by life just yet, right? You know, like I wish I could do more stuff. I know you say, oh, you do a lot of stuff. I wish I could do more. I can't. I have a 1-year-old. I got a daughter that's going to college. I have a wife.
Wow.
I have a family, you know, who wants to spend time with me. I can't sit on Twitter 7 hours a day talking to everybody. You know, it's like, it's different. But when you're young, you can do that. And the more that you do, the more likely the right person is going to see you. The right person is going to think you're funny or you're cool. And you those relationships, you let people know. Don't be afraid. Like, one good thing about social media is you can reach out and touch anybody. I don't care if they respond or don't respond. Tell LeBron, you do a video about LeBron, hit his DMs up.
Yeah.
You never know. He
Supreme Dreams did it.
You know what I'm saying? You do something on LeBron, you hit him up, you add him. I'm sorry, it's my dog saying the doorbell. You add him, you hit him on every social media platform. He retweets that, he puts that on his Instagram. Yep. Now you see what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying, right? So absolutely. That's what I'm trying to tell people. Just, you need content and put it on as much as you can, so hopefully the right person will see you.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for making the time for me. I just can't thank you enough. I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. Do you want to share any social media or any projects that you're working on with anybody that's listening?
Well, you know, you can find me. You can always find me at BSO and BSO TV. Facebook is Black Sports Online. Like I said, if anybody ever wants to hit me up, I'm always taking messages and trying to help people as best I can. Because like I said, we have to look out for us. And sometimes I don't feel we always do that in the industry. You know, it's kind of, like I said, it's a survival of the fittest sometimes, but that one part I'm never going to change with. I'm going to always try to help people. I want people to go above and beyond what I've done. I've done a lot, and I'm very blessed, and I'm very happy. I want anybody that's coming behind me, come up on my shoulders. I'm not going to bring you down. I'm going to push you up, and that's what I want to continue to do.
I appreciate you so much. I'm a big fan of yours. I look forward to all the things that you're going to do in the future, and I thank you for your time.
No problem, man. Appreciate you. You have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.